So the goal would be to have it posted on YouTube this afternoon. If you want to go back, at least you'll be familiar with it, so you'll be able to work through it. I'm using the account in Mission, just so you understand, as a company, if you will, we have 3 different accounts that we work with, that I work with. And some of them have little things that are different just based on the setup, but generally speaking, they're all the same. So as I cover this today, what the goal would be, get yours set up, because this is designed for new agents, get yours set up. And then we'll talk about some of the tools that you as an agent can use, submitting the form for review, and then some of the other little things that this system has. Before I start though, let me also tell you that almost everything in here can be done 2 to 3 different ways. So what you do is decide what you're going to, how you want to use it. And I'll offer you some ideas on some of the other things that go with it as well. But if you have anything, please don't hesitate, unmute, jump in. It's probably the best way. I do have the chat box open, but normally as I'm going through this, it's easier if you just unmute and jump in. Any questions to start with? Does anybody have any issues with ZipForm right now? Those of you that are using it already. Anybody? All right. So
Mac,
yes.
This is AC. Actually, I am having a little bit of problem. Things are not coming across for me to, like, how the autofills that you put in at the beginning are not autofilling into the space. So I would have to manually do it. I know you're going to be here on Monday, so me and you could talk a little bit about that. So I don't want to waste time right now because I know there are other people. So I know me and you could probably sit down on Monday and go through that.
Okay, but when you're talking about autofill, there's 2 different things there. One of them is if you're using templates, what should be there, and then making sure the templates are updated. And the other would be the actual drop down autofill and how that's working. So, but yeah, we can do that. We can do that Monday, or we can try to touch base. I'm going to touch base on templates here this morning, because that everybody should be using the templates to begin with. Anyway, and again, those templates are maybe set up a little different in some of the companies or some of the offices with the different versions that we have going on. The very first thing to do when you have your ZipForm account is to actually get your profile set up. So underneath your photo, right here where it says profile and settings, everybody should be able to see that, okay? Yes. Right. Profile and settings, you click on profile and settings, and that should switch over to profile and settings. When you get in here, I'm going to show you several little things to keep in mind as you're working on it. One of them is down at the when it first opens up, down at the very bottom, you have email signature. You're going to be emailing things out of ZipForm, so you want to make sure that you have your signature in here. You do not need to include your email address. It's going via email, so it's already there. Including all outbound notifications. You want that anytime you email something out, a contract, a notice, an email to somebody. Like I use this system, I'll show you in a little bit. I use this system to email Jessica or Carrie, for example. And this is your signature. So that'd be one of the very first things. Get in there and make sure you have that set up. So you click on profile underneath your photo once again, get that set up. And then you go to sign in as security. Go to sign in as security. Here, I have the 2-factor authentication. I would encourage you to use the 2-factor authentication, but that's entirely up to you. I use it on everything else. I just don't use it on this because with the 3 different systems, it's enough just trying to keep it up. And I'll log in a lot of times from my phone to check something for an agent that has a question or whatever, if possible. If I have Wi-Fi, sometimes that works. And then you also have the offices. Again, we're using the Mission office, so that's there. Forms. Every one of us have form. The form library has track Texas Realtors, and then we may have a Remax library as well. And then you have another one, which is HMS. That one, not everybody has access to, only because I didn't set it up that way. It's a national advertising thing. We don't necessarily need it. On the bottom here, you can actually change the colors that you want your forms to show up in as far as the blanks go, or the text that you want to use, that kind of information. I've never really messed with this, but over the years, and I've been teaching ZipForm since about 2005 timeframe. Over the years, the only thing I can see a need for this, and the only way I've used it is if I have a client who's colorblind, then I want to make sure that the colors are not going to be a problem. And I may not know that until I send it to them and they say, I can't see what you have on there. I don't see anything, or I don't, right? So then you can go in here and you can make those changes. Underneath products, I want to talk about this just a second, because as a brokerage account, this is not the typical ZipForm account, right? So everybody in the state of Texas, every realtor in the state of Texas has access to ZipForms. All of us do. So each one of us, each one of you already have two accounts. You have one for the company and you have one for the state, but they don't go together, right? So we want to make sure that we keep that in mind. Use the brokerage account. That's what we want to work off of. Then on here, the reason I want to point that out is on here, I'm in the mission office. So I actually have Mls Connect for mission. We have Mls Connect now in every one of the offices. And what that is when I go in to create a document, in the right-hand corner of those forms, as the transaction, I can click on Mls Connect and it'll actually connect to MLS. I put the MLS number in and I'll bring the information over from MLS. So you can use it that way. We also have some of the other items in here. Offer place, I don't personally mess with. May get into that eventually here this next few months. The mobile edition, you have ZipForm mobile. To do that, you have to download it on your phone, on your mobile device. You want to download ZipForm mobile. And when you do that, it actually, the mobile version, ZipForm mobile, actually says ZipForm, and it shows like a phone with the signal indicators going out, the lines, right, going out of it, and it says ZipForm mobile. And you can use that. You can use that. You have to log into it, same login, right? And you can use that to see everything you have going on, which is pretty cool. We used to have to pay for that. So if we didn't have a brokerage account, you'd have to pay for that. It's not much. It's like $9, $10 a year or something like that. And we used to use it. And then we stopped. I say we, my wife and I used to use it. And I stopped using it just because. But we have the brokerage account, and it's so much easier today. It's more friendly than it was before. You can sign with a stylus, you can sign with your finger. So you can do electronic signatures with your mobile device. You don't have to send them something. You can do it right there at the table if that's what you want them to do. It's so cool and easy to work with. On the settings, here's an important part for you. Please, two important parts for you. Two on this settings. So you go to the profile underneath your photo, profile and settings. When it opens up, you go to settings, and you have to decide what you're going to use, either Digital Ink or DocuSign. I use Digital Ink, have used it for years. It's always been a part of ZipForm. DocuSign was something that was added, and you have to pay for it. It's extra. Right now, it says the NAR is providing this as a benefit. I have it off, so I'm not sure if that's been updated. I thought that had gone away already, or if it hasn't, it will here pretty soon. So Digital Ink has been, that's ZipForm all the way, has been for years. Two things to know. One is you need to change this time zone. Make sure it says Central Time Zone. It doesn't matter where they are at. What matters is where the property's at. That's the way it's set up in the state of Texas. Where the property's at, we need that to match us. So you need to change it to Central Time. It may not have that on there. And the other one that is absolutely important is to save the autosave. Change that to 5. Usually when you first log into ZipForms, it's off. And you don't want that. If you get up and walk away from your system times out, what you just did may not be saved for you. And that autosave will save you a whole lot of heartache. How do you want your dashboard to open up? That's entirely up to you. Your opening page, how do you want that set up? I use the dashboard, which is what we looked at when we first came on. Shows all the transactions and etc. It'd say that show the same thing for you. It'll show your pipeline. This is designed to be a management tool for you and what you have going on if you use it that way. Templates. You don't have to do anything here. This is all going to be set up for you. So you don't have anything to mess with. Yeah, there's no any of these. If you click on any of these down here where we have Young Alfred, for example, that's an insurance company. When it says integration, they will email everybody in your system. So that's the reason as a brokerage, I have that off for the insurance, because if I click on, everybody that's in this system will get an email from them asking about insurance. And if you choose to do that, that's up to you, but I'm not going to do it on the brokerage side. Always click save going in between the screens. Notification settings is another area that's important, because we're going to talk about some of these and how they play a part in what you're doing with ZipForm. Task and checklist. I don't use them personally. I don't have them set up within the company. Corpus Christi has a checklist that can be applied on their system. You don't need a manual checklist anymore. You don't need a manual checklist anymore. And I've had people ask, do you have a checklist that we can use? If you're going to use it to create automation, absolutely. But if you're going to do it where you're printing it, nah. Use the system. It works a whole lot better. Doc inbox. I'm going to show you 2 ways to use the doc inbox. And that's something you want on, in my opinion. Your email notifications, in-app notifications, I would have them on so they get notified anytime something goes into your doc inbox. And I'll show you how to use that here in just a minute. Same thing with transaction and documents. If you have a transaction that you're working with, if there's anything going on with it, you want to get notified. Same thing with documents, the sharing, all of that should be on. It'll save you time to get notified in the application and or via email. Approval, broker approval. This is on our side, so you shouldn't have any problems with that. E-signature, yes, we want to do that. Ooh. Don't be changing that. And then I do have title notifications on, so you can actually send everything from here to the title. All right, so that's the profile. Any questions there? Cool. All right. So this is the dashboard, and this is, again, you can change this so it has whatever you want on there. This is the way I have it set up so I can see what's going on. Like right now, for example, this is the Harlingen Mission Office. And I have 34 documents to approve. It depends on how the agents submit them, and I'll show you that in just a second. But you have documents to approve and a transaction to approve. The documents work a lot better. So the whole idea behind this system is so that we check things, especially for those of you that are just getting started. If there's a way to check the documents before they go to the client, that would be better. So we can make sure everything's filled out the way it's supposed to. If that doesn't work for some reason, we can always check it after and make corrections. But and then the final is to make sure that we have all the documentation we need before we close out the file. And when we say close out the file, you don't close that out. You close it in here as far as it's a active file, it's a prospect, active, close. You do all that, but you don't move the file. You don't do anything with it. I don't do anything with it. It stays in ZipForm and is archived for us because the broker is required to keep the records for 4 years, right? And they'll be in here longer than 4 years, actually. One of the good things, if you use this as your transaction management, your pipeline, just like down here at the bottom, you can see Gina Sears right now. She's leading with sales volume. This is just current with what's going on. Yanette's in there with 1.4. These numbers go up and down depending on what you put into the system. And sometimes, and they change on a monthly basis, right? This is a quarterly performance is what it actually is set at right now. But I can see these numbers on a regular basis. So I can see who's doing what and what's not working, what is working, et cetera. And I go in and look at that once in a while. Any questions there? All right, so the next thing I want to touch base on is templates. Everybody should be using a template. And just like AC when he was asking those questions, so you have access to these templates. So when you go in, when you log in, you go to templates, it's not going to show anything here. It shouldn't show anything here. What you should have is a blank, nothing, right? You click on new. Once again, you're going to click on new right here. And let's say you want to create a new listing template. The idea of having the template is so that you save yourself time as you're doing your transactions and you have consistency. So the idea of the template is if there's any one box or any one set of information that you use on a regular basis, put it in the form. And then when you open up a transaction, you want to add your template. And I'm going to show you how that works here in just a second. Let's say I want to create a new template. So I clicked on one for listings, and I'm going to do this as a new agent training. And residential. Now this auto apply box right here is really important. These dots right here are real important to you. I would highly recommend you're creating your template. I would highly recommend you click on the second one. Because you notice how it says residential new transactions. I have residential marked up here. Anytime I go into ZipForm to create a new residential transaction, because it's going to ask you that when you start a transaction, a box like this is going to open up. If I mark auto apply, this template we're about to create will automatically go into that transaction, automatically. If I click on do not apply automatically, I'm going to have to add the template every time I go in. And you don't need to do that. This is a new feature they've added over the last couple of years. I absolutely love it. Residential new transactions. If I change this to industrial, you'll see how you automatically add it to a listing template that's industrial. So you could have several of these set up and you fine tune them to make them yours so that you can save time and be consistent with what you do. Because we primarily work with residential, that's what I'm going to use today. And down here in the bottom, it's going to ask you to select a template. So you're building a template. You're building your template. Do you want to add the office template to it? And that's the whole idea here is you say yes, and then you click on save. And now you have the new template that you just added to this. And I didn't add any forms, but what it did do is it brought the forms over from the office template automatically, right? And like I said, each office is a little different. This is the one for Mission and Harlingen, and it has just about every form on both of them, buyer and seller side. It has every form you could possibly imagine that you would need for listing and buyer. When I set this up, that's exactly the way I set it up. Corpus Christi is more fine-tuned, and South Padre Island is set up a little different as well. But it doesn't matter how it's set up. You're going to make this is yours now. You see right here at the top where it says new agent, right? This is your template. So you make it what you want it to be. You've added what the company has, so you're going to make it yours. Right here on the right-hand side where it has organized, for example, you can put these forms in order if you wanted to. If you don't like the block, you can see it by line by clicking on the line there. It'll do that for you. On whether it's block or line, You have a drop down. You can click on that. It opens up and allows you to make changes, do whatever you want to it. I use the block a lot of times because it just, for me, it works better. But to save space, the line might work better for you. If I'm creating my own template, and this is on the listing side, and here's one of the ways whether I know you're using the office template or not. You see these 3 folders down here? If you're in the Mission or Harlingen office, you're in this ZipForm. If I look at your transaction and you don't have these 3 folders, you didn't use a template to set it up, right? Because these 3 folders are automatically there. If I go in here and I'm looking at this going, okay, this is a residential. I don't want condos in here. I can click on the drop down. I can delete the condo form. I don't want that in there. That's just because you're setting it up with your preference, right? Sewer facility. I'm doing residential, but I don't do anything in the rural area, so I don't need the sewer facility there. So you make those choices. And the other part, when I click on organize, let me show you how that one works. If I click on organize, I can now move these around. And just like it says here, you drop and drag, or drag and drop, right? So let's say I wanted to amend the listing. I'm just going to grab that one. I want to move it over here to the first place. I just move it over. Yeah. And then when I'm done, I just click on done and it stays like that. So you have your template set up for you the way you want to work. So for example, one of the things you might do is put the forms in the order that you use them, which is the way I believe I have Corpus set up, for example. Everything, when I initially set it up, I had IABS, listing agreement, seller's disclosure, and then some notices to go with that, right? So everything was set up in order. Where this wasn't, I took every form and put it in here because of the office and what was going on with that office at the time. All right, anybody have any questions about this? Setting up the template. All right. So on the left-hand side, go back over here, documents again. So on the left-hand side, where it says folders, and you have the folders down here at the bottom, these folders don't have forms in them that have been used. So when you click on folders, it should open up here, right? And the initial folder is everything, and then you have the individual folders. When you click on this, it opens up, you have all these folders. Here's the initial documents, for example. This is what I was getting at. Information about brokerage services, listing agreement, seller's disclosure, seller's authorization to release. Those are basic documents for any listing. That's in this template. If you use the template, it's already set up for you. And then you have your offers, which is blank, and then the funding folder, which has the funding form already in there, which is what you need. This is the form for the Mission and Harlingen office. On the initial documents, this is your template. You've added the offices to it. This is yours. You're customizing it. So what you want to do is you want to go into information about brokerage services. We need the broker's information in here, right? And every one of these boxes needs to be filled out. And here you can actually put NA. There you go. And this is what AC, this is what I was talking about when you're talking about the autofill. You have the drop down here where you can autofill. That should be just a carryover from anything that you've done. Right. And the phone numbers and et cetera, you can throw those in there. And whoever your designated supervisor is, their license number. And if you're out of Mission or Harlingen, that would be me, or South Padre Island. That would be myself, unless you're on a team. And then this would be your information. So you go ahead and put your information in here, right? And then up at the top, On the far left, it has save. So you want to save that. You're saving it to your template. This is your template. So if I go back, now I have my information about brokerage services filled out. Back to the template here real quick. Initial docs. I fill out the information about brokerage services. We have all that information in there and it's saved. Right here, we have the listing agreement. And when on the listing agreement, you want to go in and fill that information out because again, you want it so that, and you can do it whichever way you want to. I always use the company name and my name. I've always done that. You can just use Remax Elite if you want. It doesn't matter. I use myself on here because as the agent, because when I'm sitting there talking to the seller, I want to tell them that Remax Elite has the listing. In fact, the exact verbiage I used to use is, if anything ever happened to me, the broker is always going to be responsible. You can always get hold of the broker if anything isn't working out right, or if there's a problem someplace and you cannot get hold of me, you can always get hold of the broker, but I'm the one actually as your main contact. And then you plug in your email address and your address all in these boxes, get that filled out. The idea of the template is, again, you have all the basic information for yourself, right? So you fill out the address, the boxes. What is your norm? I didn't normally work with properties that had a homeowners association, so I have is not marked. I normally used, I normally use that percentage. You can do whatever you want to with it. Protection period, 30 days. And I'm not going to go through and fill this out for you. There's actually a video on YouTube where we actually go through the listing agreement. So you can go through and fill it out. What I wanted to do is just show you some basic things. So on here, this is mine. Right? So whatever I put in here is going to be saved. I click save. That's on my template. Then you have the other forms in there. If I want to do anything else here within the template, I have add a document or add a folder. I can, if I click on that, it'll allow me to go in and add a folder to it, which the 3 folders that we have there are the 3 basic ones you need to get you started with it. But that's setting the template up. Anybody have any questions there? So your profile and then your template, those are the 2, that's the order you want to get your template set up. And then you can go from there to transactions. So profile, templates, and then transactions. When you go into your transactions, here's where the template comes into play. If I click on new, and I go to new listing, for example, so I'm inside transaction right here. I click on new, I click on new listing. If this was a real listing, I could probably, when I type in the address, it's going to give me a chance to pull it there. Here's where Mls Connect is. So when I click on that, this is what I was talking about. Mls Access is GMAR, property type. What do we have? What's the listing MLS ID number? If I put that information in here and I click on use listing, it's going to pull the information over from that MLS number automatically over. It'll give me the legal description. It'll give me whatever's in MLS for the basic information. Here, I'm going to click on residential, and you watch the bottom of this if you would. When I click on residential, now I have, there's the new agent template at the bottom, right? Select the templates I want to apply. Here's the new agent because it's my personal one. Mine looks a little different than yours would. And I click on save. So now you're inside a transaction. You're inside a transaction. And the information you put in your template is now on these documents. So here's the folders that we had earlier, right? We had the initial documents, we had our offers, funding, and archive. See what this did. Anyway, it'll bring it over from the template. If you forget to do that, or you don't have the template set up, you can click on it right here and say apply the template, and it'll bring that information over for you. All right, and when you're doing this sheet right here, this page right here is the page where you want to start out with. If you use the Mls Connect, the MLS number will be in here, and all that information from there from MLS will be filled out in here. This is the cover sheet, if you will, on this. When I plug information in here, it'll transfer over to the forms, the documents we need. So that aspect of it will work. And again, you have different tools across the top here that you could possibly use. Some of these, like Start CMA, we don't use. Record Connect, we don't have any of that set up on this. They're tools that can be added to the account, not necessarily functioning in all aspects. We have the apply template we talked about. We have the add document, which would be, I can add any kind of a document I want to this transaction, any kind of a document from any location to include my computer. If I wanted to add that in there. When we're looking at the summary aspect of it, we also have email to transaction. So here's one of the first, inside the transaction, one of the first major takeaways, in my opinion. When I click on email to transaction, here's an email address that I would want to use for this transaction. So this was a listing. We're doing a listing, right? I would take this email address and plug it into MLS in agent remarks and put a comment in there, email all offers to this email address. Every transaction you have has their own it has its own personal email address. So as a listing agent, if I had 30 listings, every one of them will have a separate email address. And I would put that in I'm so serious about this. I would put that email address in every one of the agent remarks and say email all offers to this email address. And the reason for that is because when those come in, and those transactions come in, when that information comes in, it's going to come right in here to our documents. And it'll be right down here at the bottom every time they come in. So if somebody submits an offer, it's going to come in here, and then I can take that offer and move it over here to offers, for example. And inside here, I might create an additional folder and say, Carrie's offer, for example. Create that folder inside here so that I keep everybody's offers separated and it's nice and organized. It makes it so much easier for you if you'll do that at the beginning instead of trying to do it at the end. Then I can take this form and just drop it in that folder. And it keeps everything organized for you. But if you'll use that email to transaction, it's also secure, right? If they email a transaction to you and you have Yahoo, AOL, or Gmail, or whatever you're using, that's not necessarily a secure function. And you may have personal information for somebody, especially on the lease side. Have them email everything to this, or go straight into ZipForms and goes right to that transaction. Anybody have any questions on that one? Right. So the other thing is on here, I had mentioned the fact that this is a cover sheet for everything you have basically for this transaction. Right here at the bottom is more parties. So there's one way I can get to that one. Here's another one up here at the top. I can click on parties here and I can add them in. I want to add them in because I can actually email them right from here. Now, to do that, they have to have an email address. So when I go in to set their, if I don't have them in here, for example, let's say I want to add buyer one. You see where the sheet opens up at there? Right. So I go in, put all their information in, I put their email address in and click on save. And actually about the only thing it really needs is an email address. Jeez. And you can save them as a contact if you want to within the system, which is what I would recommend because you're working with them, and you just click on save. So now I can email them right through this transaction. The system will pick that up to begin with if you put it in there. So you have the buyer side, the seller side, service providers, everybody should be inside this transaction. It makes it so much easier to work with. I don't have to go from here out to my Gmail to send them something. I can do it right through the transaction. Here's why I think that's important. Trex says we're supposed to have a record of everything that goes on with that transaction. Broker is supposed to maintain the records for 4 years, but you as an agent are supposed to have a communication record as well. Now, most agents don't keep that. We rely on the fact that if I actually needed to do something, I can go back to my phone and probably pull out text messages or a call log or something like that. But if I'm using this system, if I click on history, you can see right here, I sent a secure message to this person. And when I click on show more, it'll actually show me, show more. Yeah. Show me what the message was that was sent to it. And so if they actually emailed the message in, I'm sorry, if they emailed the offer in, it'll show up here as well. And I'll show you how some of that works here in just a second. So again, that comes back to email the transaction and then your contacts within that transaction, the parties to that transaction. Anybody have any questions or comments? Right. So you can also put notes on the transaction. If I wanted a note on the transaction, I can put something in here. Just sent email. If I wanted to do that, I could put that in there. Just sent email checking on appraisal. And I could save it. And when I clicked on save, it says save and notify. So now it opens up the email box where I can email that individual, hey, I'm checking on the appraisal. Down here on the bottom, I can copy me. I can include a sticky notes if I wanted to, or I just send them a quick email. And it gets tracked in that transaction. Makes it so much easier to work with. Not often, but occasionally you'll have somebody that says, can you fax that to me? And the answer is yes. I don't need a fax machine. All I need is ZipForm. Right here at the top where it says fax, if I click on that, it's going to tell me to plug in a fax number. And here I can include a fax cover sheet. If I include a fax cover sheet, ZipForm again has a, they have a 800 number, basically. It'll tell that individual if they're going to fax something back to me to fax it to this number. And ZipForm will take that fax they send you through their system, through ZipLogix, and write into this file. And I've used that several times. I had a client up in Waco. That's the only way she would communicate. After I walked her through how to connect her printer to the fax line, she would fax me all the documents because she didn't know how to scan them in, save them, and then upload them and all that stuff. And it was easier. Do you have a regular phone line? Yes. Plug it into the back, do this. And I kept her from having to, she lived in a rural area, kept her from having to drive into town and go to Kinko's or whatever every time she wanted to fax something. And this fax cover sheet is going to be the same number that, and the barcode that's on there is going to put it in this transaction. So that works really well. I've used it, like I said, I've used it several times. Yes.
Or just with the internet, they could send it, because I've had agents ask you for the fax and they can't fax or something, and I can explain to them. Sometimes they ask for that.
Yeah, they absolutely have to have internet, right? Because you're online. But it works really well. Let me just show you something. Let me log into both of them. All right, so this is my old ZipForm account before I joined Remax Elite. One of the things when we talk about the fax, for example, let's see if it's in here. Let's see. I've used this for a lot of different things, but I had yeah, I don't see it. It's probably too old. Right, there we go. So here where it says fax document. And this is the form she used. So it's going to ZipForms. There's the phone number they had. I said 800, but just to explain it to you. But they fax it to that phone number. That barcode tells it to bring it right into this transaction. And then they were able to send their documents that I needed every time. Like I said, she used it several times. Right. And there's actually a broker in McAllen that years ago when I was teaching a ZipForm class, I told him you no longer need a fax machine. You don't need a fax machine. You just use ZipForm. And he had not only a fax machine, but a dedicated line for that wasn't even being used. Right. And that's an additional cost. We don't need that. You just use what you have. Right here, it has the fax cover sheet. So again, I'm inside the transaction. Right? There's the 123 A Street we created earlier. Here's a fax cover sheet. And this is what it looks like. And I can either send the fax cover sheet or I can print it. If I send it, again, it's going to open up the email. I can email it to somebody. Or I can fax it to them. And that's what, with that lady, the one I just showed you, that's exactly what I do is I would email her. I emailed her the fax cover sheet and she would always just fax things back to me as we work through the transaction. Because she could, open the email and print it. She had no idea how to scan it, put it in a file and upload it. It's so much easier just to do it this way. All right, any questions on that one? Anybody? I apologize for that. That was all over the place. All right, so inside your documents, when you're inside your documents, you want to actually go in and take a look at what you have in there. And again, you can put these in order. You can, whatever you want to do with it, delete them if you don't need them inside the transaction. Again, you just click on the drop-down box and you hit delete, get rid of it if you want to. If I'm inside the transaction, let's say I have this one set up. This is the form I've been working on, right? I have it set up and it's ready to go. What I need to do, what you need to do, if it's ready to go, is right here at the top where it says submit for review. You click on that, needs review, and you put in, preferably put a note in here, especially if there's anything special about it, like this is my first transaction. I'm showing it to the buyer tomorrow at this time or today at this time, whatever, throw that in there and just hit apply. And what happens is I get an email telling me that there's a transaction that needs to be reviewed. I will tell you that if it's something you need to have done within the next couple hours, you probably be better off texting me as well. And I'll see if I can get that going. When I get up in the morning, I already know what I have planned for the day. And very seldom do I stop what I'm doing to go fix something that should have been done beforehand. But so if you send me something today and say, Mac, I need this today, I'll try to get to it, but I can't make any promises, right? Because the schedule's already been filled as much as I can. So the other thing is, if I want to send this out where I need a signature, then what I do is I click on e-sign. Here's the document. Here's the document. And again, you'll have to play with this to become more familiar with it. But here's the document that I want to send out. I can select additional documents if I want to. I click on next. It's going to ask me to identify who's going to sign it. For that to work, you're going to need a name, and you're going to need see, there you go. I have no last name, so it didn't work in that file. Here's this one. I have that, so that one will work. And what happened was when I clicked on the box, that's when this one jumped up there, right? Popped up. So now I have a name there, and it will allow me to add that one in there. If I click on one that doesn't have a name, or let's say it does have a name, first and last is what's required. If it has the name in there, but it doesn't have an email address, again, it won't allow me to do anything unless I put something in there, right? So one of the other things is if I've done all the information, or from the beginning, I filled out who they are, the contacts, put that information in there, or if it's my first transaction with the individuals, it's going to pull it from the contract. If I'm doing a listing agreement, real listing agreement, it's going to pull the names and the email address for that seller from the form I fill out. And if I'm sending it to them to sign, it'll automatically have all that information in here, right? So now I have them in here. This is the signing order. And here's what I'd like for you to do is when you look at this, where you have 1 and 2 here, the way this system is set up is if I have them in order and I have this little box marked here, signing order, the first one has to sign before the second one can sign. And I can tell you from past experience, that's not good, right? I don't care which order they sign. I just need to get it signed. But in the past, we've had, like we had a husband tell us one time, just send it to me first and then I'll sign and then my wife can sign. He was a truck driver. We sent it to him. He forgot to sign it. So his wife can't sign anything until he stops again because he has to sign first. So I take that off today. That's what I highly recommend. It doesn't matter who signs. It's going to put their signature. Remember, we changed that to Central Time. It's going to put their signature in the time they signed on there. And when it comes back together, I'll have both signatures already on the form. The system will do that for you. If I get to this point and I need to add a signer over here on the left, I'm going to add somebody just by clicking on that box. It'll bring us back to here. Or if I have somebody I want to review it, and this would be like they want their parents to look at it or something like that. So I can click on add a reviewer and I can add that person on there. So they can actually, they're not going to sign it. They're just going to take a look at it, right? Running that sometimes, working with a young couple, for example. You click on next, and it's actually going to take you over to the form. And any form can be worked on here. It does not have to be, it can be the promulgated forms. It can be the other forms that are in the system, or it could be a inspection that I uploaded, or an appraisal that I uploaded, or tax records I uploaded. Any form can work in here, but the way they work is going to be a little different. So for example, had this been a promulgated form, this blank down here on the bottom would have already been filled in. It's not, so I'm going to click on drop and drag, and what I want is I want a signature. So I'm going to sign here, and I might put a date there so they have the date that they signed. And the same thing here, sign here. But did you notice anything wrong with these signatures? What? Up here on the upper right-hand corner where you have signers, I want both people to sign on this form. So here's the other one. Now on a promulgated form, like a contract or something that is a mandatory form, right? This is not. It's an authorization to release. On a promulgated form, these blanks are already in there, but you can just add that in there. If I need to mark something out, I can actually do that here. Here's the markup. I'm clicked on line. So I go over here and I draw a line through it, right? And then I can go back over here and put your initials here because we made a change. And remember, change parties. Put another initial here, right? And you have the two initials. It's so easy to work with if you just take your time and learn how it works. And then when I click on next, it's actually going to, do you want to send that out? And I'm not going to send this out, obviously, but it would actually go out to them. And then when they get it, they'll open up and then go from there. All right. Anybody have any questions about that? Inside the transaction, had I sent that out right here where it says e-sign, and again, there's a couple different ways of doing this stuff. You have the e-sign on the left-hand side, you have e-sign here. But if I go to e-sign, it's going to show that that envelope was created. That's right here. If I need to go back and fix something, I can click on that, it'll open it up, and it allows me to look at this here. Here's who I sent it to. It shows that it's pending. Even though I didn't send it out, it was created, right? And it's still pending. It hasn't been worked on yet. So, and I can add a document. I can do whatever I want to. I can delete it. I can delete the whole thing if I wanted to. Yes. Get rid of it. Boom. We're gone. So practice with that so you're familiar with it, and you can work with this with your clients. Send yourself one and see what it looks like, so you're familiar with what it looks like for your clients. Inside the transaction, any questions, comments? Oh, all right. Inside the transaction on documents, you have tools up here. This disclosures is highly recommended. Corpus Christi uses it a lot, but on disclosures, it's the seller's disclosure. So you have to set this up, and what it does, it's a seller's shield is what it's called, and it's a company. It doesn't cost the seller anything to use this, and it doesn't cost you anything to use it. It does cost if they want seller's shield. But the advantage of using this versus our regular seller's disclosure, which is right here, is that it walks through everything. And if they mark yes on something where they're supposed to provide additional information or an additional form, it's going to require them to do that before it allows them to go forward. So I would highly recommend it. I learned about it in San Antonio years ago. It works really well. If they want it, if they want the seller's shield, they can pay for it. It's not a whole lot of money. I think it's I don't even know what the price is now today. But it provides them like $20,000 worth of insurance coverage if anything is wrong on the seller's disclosure, or if they run into a situation where a buyer wants to do something because of the seller's disclosure. Right. So it's extremely beneficial. Like I said, a lot of the agents and corporates are using it more so than anywhere else within the company, but highly recommend. If I'm inside the transaction and I actually have a form open, and let me open a all right, I'm going to open this listing. As we've been working on this, on the right-hand side, there's a blue box that says forms. So if there's a form you need, like whatever it is, this was on a listing, so we didn't have the 1-4 family contract in there. If there's a form you need, it's listed here. This is the library I was talking about earlier. You have Trek, you have Texas Realtors, and you have Remax Corporate. And by the way, on that, all we use is the funding form. Do not use that buyer rep form that's here. Use only the funding form from here. If you are on, trying to get ZipForms to take that back out because that's the old one. We do not use those. If you're on Texas Realtors, you have all the forms that are available. It's Trek, it's Texas Realtors, they're all in there together. If they're highlighted, that means they're actually in the transaction. If they're not in the transaction, you can click on them, double click, and it'll automatically add them to that. If you're in there where you're looking at forms, it'll open it up. If you're not there, it'll add it to the bottom of the list. What I'd like for you to do, though, and you please write this down. If you go to Texas Realtors and you type in FDES, Frank Delta Echo Sierra, it will give you the form description and reference. I would highly recommend you use this. For myself, I have this printed. And in fact, when I set up the templates for the company, the same way I did it years ago for us, I printed these off, and then I went through and I highlighted which forms I wanted where. Right. So the one I have, for example, blue is seller, yellow is buyer, that kind of thing. And the reason I emphasize you take a look at this or print it off so you have it as a reference is when you look at it, it tells you exactly how that form is designed to be used. Like here's the condominium addendum. So I use to list a condo, I use the exclusive right to sell, that listing agreement, but I have to have this attached to it. I have to have this, that's a condominium listing. Just using the exclusive right to sell is not a condo listing. You have to have this. And what's crazy about it is it tells you that on the form, but who reads the forms? On exclusive right to sell, it says that this form may be used for vacant lots. That can be, but the 1-4 family contract form cannot be or shouldn't be. You would use the appropriate contract for that. This is a listing. It's different, right? But again, this will explain every one of the forms and how they're used. It's a great reference tool. I've been using it for years, especially on the management side. When somebody asks a question, what form do I use? It's there. Use control find a lot of times to go in and grab that and make it work. When that form is open, you have all these icons across the top here. Depending on the type of form it is, depends on whether you have access to this. All of this. So for example, here's a form that I want to highlight. Now I will tell you the attorneys have said not to highlight forms for the clients. And the reason for that is it takes the emphasis off of other things and says this highlighted portion is more important than everything else there in that paragraph or that line. But I've used that for years. I use it for training purposes today as we work through things. The other thing is you have strikeout. Remember on promulgated forms, we cannot strike out. So these two items, both of them I just showed you, are not available on a promulgated form, 1 to 4 family, not available, right? Because that's promulgated. We're not allowed to make those changes. Once it's a PDF, you might be able to do it on the signature side, but you won't be able to do it in here usually. A lot of times you'll hear me say, if the address is too long or there's 5 buyers or sellers or whatever, click on the paperclip. And what I'm talking about is right here in the center, there's a paperclip. If I click on that, it says add addendum. So what I want you to do is just watch this form real quick on the left-hand side. When I click on this, it's going to open up an addendum page. Let's say I want to go paragraph 1. That's parties. I'm sorry, paragraph title. Let's do this again. Paragraph title is parties. Paragraph 1. And you type in, 3 names or 4 names or whatever it is. When you click save, you now have that little red arrow there. That tells you that you have the addendum attached to this. So if I was to print this right now, when I go to print that, it's going to print that last page. It's going to print that last page on there, and yours will have you see the 1 up here on the top. Can you see that on there? And it'll have that last page on here, which is this one. And they have to sign it and date it as well. So now you have everything together as one, and it works out so much better than trying to type in here, see exhibit A, which is what we used to use. Right? You have a lot of tools across the top that you can use. You can save it as a PDF. You can send it. You can print it. When I clicked on print this form. I can print multiple forms, or I can print a sample. Anybody have any questions about these icons across the top?
On the addendum, can you add signatures too, or it has to be printed and signed?
No, you can, if you go to the electronic signature, if you go to e-sign, it'll allow you to put a signature in there. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, sir, and in there, is there like the Spanish ones forms?
No.
No.
The Spanish forms are on texasrealestate.com. I can
Okay.
show you exactly where that's at. But they're not allowed to be used as contracts.
Only like to translate to the
Right.
client.
So you lay them, as most of you know, I don't speak a lick of Spanish. So well, maybe a little bit, but just enough to get in trouble. But the forms are good if you lay them side by side. So somebody who reads Spanish can look at them and see what they're actually signing. So you go to texasrealestate.com, for realtor members, legal and ethics, blank form downloads. And right here you have them in Spanish and Vietnamese. Not everything is there, but the majority of the forms that we use on a regular basis is there. So let's take that listing agreement that we just did. For example, if I click on Spanish, if I click on the form over here, it's going to open up as a regular form. But if I click on the Spanish version, it'll open up here in Spanish. And you should be able to see that. Yes. Right. And
I see.
not to use as a contract, but they can actually look through it and see how it's filled out. So they know what they're signing and eliminate any issues. And again, we have it in Vietnamese as well, so that you can use it that way if you have anybody that needs that. They're working on getting more of these. It's just that the translation sometimes becomes a little confusing.
Sometimes it's a little off, or
Right,
try to
exactly.
put another word. That word makes a lot of difference.
Yes. Yeah. Years ago when I was doing pre-licensing, I had taken it was a for sale by owner letter, I believe it was, or an expired letter. It was one of the prospecting letters that I had picked up, and I had Google Translate it, and I had taken it into the class. I I'd taken it into my pre-licensing class and said, hey, what do you guys think about this? And they started laughing because Google's translation of what I was trying to say was completely off from what I was wanting to try to convey. But anyway, I can't wrap this up without sharing a prospecting tip for you. For those of you that are prospecting for sell by owners, one of the techniques that we used to use, and it works, is to stop and knock on the door and ask them some questions. What's going on? What's their price? You're trying to stay up to date with what's happening in the market. Try and be aware of what's on the market, that kind of thing, right? And one of the things we used to use is we would use forms out of here, like the information about brokerage services, seller's disclosure notice, because every property seller in the state of Texas, residential property seller in the state of Texas, is supposed to provide a seller's disclosure notice. There's two of them. There's the TREC seller's disclosure notice, and there's the Texas Realtors seller's disclosure notice. But they're required to disclose the condition of the property, residential sales. It's a requirement. So information about brokerage services, seller's disclosure notice, listing agreement, buyer rep agreement, and the 1 to 4 family contract were the 5 forms we carry. And this is back when I had the mission office years ago for a different company. What I would do is I go in here, I grab this, you see where it says print sample. And I would have that sample form that I would share with them. So they can't use this, but it's an example of what they need to do. I give that to them just so you know you're supposed to provide a seller's disclosure notice to every buyer that comes along. You can actually, this is a sample copy. You can actually download it from Texas Real Estate Commission's website if you want to, because those are forms available to the public, or I can come by next week and just drop you off one. And they'll say yes, because they don't think you're going to come by anyway, right? But you work off a schedule and you know absolutely you'll be there next week, same day, same time. And you'll give them a copy of it, talk to them about it. And then you have the 5 forms you can work through, right? Usually about 3rd or 4th form, they're going to either tell you not to come back or list their property with you. So that works really well. Any questions about anything on ZipForm, Sarah?